Hello there, Seraph17 once again. This is my Gears of War 4 Inconceivable difficulty video walkthrough. This is Act 2-3 and it's called Plan B. This is an interesting mission. It's pretty long as well. It starts off with a tracker fight, and I blame the trackers for implementing something that I do not enjoy, which is the ability to punch with a Lancer. So, conventionally in Gears of War, the Lancer has a chainsaw bayonet, and that is its melee. It is a slow revving but highly dangerous vacuum of death. That's what it always was, that's how it worked. In this game, when things get close, you can punch when you have a Lancer for some reason, and the amount of times the Horde will punch you instead of chainsawing you is really frustrating. Because if somebody tries to chainsaw you when you have a Lancer on, you'll defend yourself with the chainsaw battle. You can win a chainsaw battle even if you didn't initiate it. Do you know what you can't win? Getting punched in the face by a fucking dinosaur lizard man. Which is really dumb. Because I hate that they can do that. And it's the cheekiest elbow jab that they do as well. Like, it really is the most disrespectful move. And I don't remember it in the old games. But that's because I haven't played them in a very long time. And do you know what I found out the other day, which baffled my mind? Gears of War 3 isn't on PC. Why is Gears of War 3 not on PC? Could somebody give me, like, a convenient answer to that? Because, why wouldn't it be on PC? What a stupid thing, right? Gears of War 1's on PC. I think Gears of War 2's on PC. But Gears of War 3, arguably the best game in the series, isn't on PC. I don't get that. That's confusing to me. And even if it is on PC, I must have read the article I was reading the other day incorrectly, and that's my bad. But, how strange is that? Because at this moment in time, right, Gears of War 3 came out when? 2011? It's been 7 years since Gears of War 3. By the way, that was them chainsawing an enemy and kicking it to me. Do you see what it did? Almost killed me. Be very careful with the stupid AI. But that's been 7 years. Didn't Dark Souls come out in 2011 as well? And Dark Souls got a remaster at a better frame rate and better visual fidelity. Like, other than the Gears Ultimate, which is the first game redone, and redone kind of half-assedly, Gears really hasn't received love in a long time. Of all the games to get a high-definition remaster and a PC port, I feel like Gears was one of the ones that deserved it, right? And I know that when you got the Ultimate Collection, you got all the other Gears games for Xbox, but do you really want to go back to those games the way they look once you've come from a game like this? Like, can you imagine playing this game on PC and then going back to Gears 3 on Xbox 360? It's going to look like a Game Boy game. Like, that's just how games are, right? In your mind, they look beautiful, and then you go back and you understand that you didn't understand anti-aliasing, or you didn't understand, you know, all these different things. Like, you didn't understand what screen tearing was. You didn't understand why VSync and getting rid of that is quite important, even though on PCs you use VSync in your graphics card menu but you don't use it in the game because it affects the mouse input, and all this other ridiculous stuff. Like, you didn't understand because that was the height of technology at the time, but now games look so much nicer and smoother and sharper with all this advanced technology. So when you do go back, you're like, what the hell is this? Why does it look so bad? And there's even parts of it that looks charming. Like, the Jaggies look kind of cool because they're a representation of that period, right? You know, when I go back and I play, like, Final Fantasy VIII, the graphics look so shit, they look amazing. Like, there's something really... It's almost like that pixel art that people love, but Jaggies and polygonal and awkward, right? And there's a charm to it, but fundamentally, it still looks kind of rough, right? It's a beautiful game, still a beautiful game, stylistically beautiful, but that is a game that would look amazing with an overhaul and 60 frames per second. Like, that would be so good. And the PC thing is just... How it's not on PC, I have no understanding of that. That's crazy to me. I'd love to play Gears 3 on PC. I really would. Like, if I could do Gears 1, 2, and 3 again, with mouse and keyboard, on 144Hz, dude, I would destroy those games. It would be so cool. But, alas, not today. So you might have noticed that we're fighting a Kestrel, and the Kestrels just don't die. It's such an underwhelming enemy, and it's so boring. But this piece of bridge over here seems really good at this. So you should be okay. I even used the salvo to try and hit it with some good damage, and it still takes a beating. It's like Wing from that episode of South Park. Crazy. I'm using the snub for Christ's sake. The reason I'm doing this is because I'm scared to go out and get ammunition. And I'm assuming it's going to be dead pretty soon, because it must be weak. Do I finish it with the snub? That would be glorious. I would love to finish this boss with the snub. The snub is one of my favourite guns in Gears, because I learnt to appreciate it in Gears of War 1. I've spoken several times about my failed run of the campaign on Insane using only the snub. And the multiplayer as well taught me so much about using it. But there are a few things in Gears that I can't achieve with that pistol. It used to fire faster than it does at the moment. They've put a bit of a trigger stop on it. But I think in Gears 1 it fired as fast as you pressed it, which made it incredibly lethal. And great active reload, great clip, and it has a zoom. It was a wonderful tool. But here is the splitting up section. I chose the left-hand path. I think it's the one I chose the last time, I can't remember. This is a DR1 with a tri-shot, and I'm in a lot of trouble right now. I could have easily died just then. I got very lucky. On the opposite side we have a Guardian. I'm going to use the tri-shot to probably kill the Guardian, because it just makes sense. You can't aim all the way to the right though, when you're on cover like this. I have to be on the piece of cover that Dad's on. There we go. And as long as I put a couple shots on him, I'm not too worried about wasting this weapon. It's a throwaway weapon anyway. But if you're new to the channel, or you're new to my Gears stuff, or perhaps you missed the videos that I've spoke about that on Gears of War 1, I got all the way up to Act 4, the pumping station underground, I think it was. Was it Act 4? I think it was no. It was Act 3, right? End of Act 3, because Act 4 is when you come out of the ground upstairs. Yeah, end of Act 3. It's where they introduce the Theron guards, you'll know it. But when you die on that sequence, it replaces the snub with a Boltok. So of course I died, because it's a very difficult section, and that was the end of the run. Nothing I could do. Snort. So yeah, very sad day, but it took a long time to get there. That was not the easiest thing I've ever tried, it must be said. But on this particular sequence here, I'm going to be using the weather as much as I can. I'm also going to be very defensive, because I can't quite remember this section. One of the things you'll notice in this walkthrough is there's times when I'm passive when I don't need to be, but I've forgot that something was coming, and I always err on the side of caution because it keeps you alive. And one thing I do remember about this sequence is that there's no checkpoint. Your checkpoint comes at the very end of it, and it's quite a long section, and I didn't want to repeat it because I repeated it a bunch of times on Insane, and it left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth. I don't like this sequence because of my memories of it from my Insane walkthrough. I did get quite fortunate though on Inconceivable because I didn't die, but it might reflect that in the footage right now because I'm not going to be as aggressive as I might have normally been. And that's one of the things with checkpoints. When you know you have a good checkpoint, it will embolden you and you will be confident and you'll do things you wouldn't normally do. That's the reason why checkpoints are so awesome, because they enable you to have a fallback point and they enable you to do things that aren't optimum sometimes, things that are ludicrous, crazy. I've got a great one coming up later on, which is the first introduction of a Scion. You are 5 yards from a Scion mulcher, and I'm going to show you how to destroy him and then spawn kill all of the enemies after him, and I'm going to do that sequence in about 20 seconds. If you were to fight it normally, it might take a few minutes because there's a lot of enemies, but by being bold and by being aggressive, I'm able to do something beautiful. And you know why? Because the fucking checkpoint is when the mulcher spawns. It's not 15 minutes before it when I was walking down all those steps. And that's why checkpointing and the placements of them are so important. But on the opposite side of here we've got some shepherds. Marcus has a fetish for getting in front of your Lancer. He really does. He's obsessed with it. But kill the shepherds, use the environment as best you can. I bet this bit looks amazing on PC, because it looks pretty good on a standard Xbox, and that's something I want to know as well, guys. If you're an owner of an Xbox One X, is there any interesting performance modes or like additional features for this game? Because if you could run the campaign at 60 frames per second on an Xbox One X, that is a massive feather in the cap of that console. I just don't know if you can. Because it really bugs me that the multiplayer is 60 and nothing else is, because when you go between the two modes, it's like stabbing yourself in the eye with needles. It's really annoying. And the movement on 60 frames per second is so much more fun. Everything's more fun at 60 because you've got more frames, dude. Frames are so important. They make you a better player. And people don't seem to understand it. And you get those wonderful sentiments, don't you, where they're like, I don't care about the frame rate, I just want the game to run well. I love the internet. But push forward. I'm going to be using the Retro Lancer at range, which is not a great idea, because it's really hard to use. It's just such a tough gun to use at that kind of range. The Lancer is such a workhorse. I wish you could change the muzzle flare on it though. Go back to Gears 1's muzzle flare. I used to love that shit. The muzzle flare on this gun, on the first game, if you don't know, almost looks random. It's just this weird helter-skelter of sparkly light, and it looks awesome. You'd be surprised how much the Lance has changed if you go back, guys. Even with the aiming on it and the sights on the model of the gun to the lights on the gun, there's been a lot of additions over the years, and it's changed. It used to fire a lot faster too. One of the things you've possibly forgotten is how quicker the Lancer used to be. So interesting. It's quite a legacy now, isn't it? There's 6 games. Can you imagine games that have gone for 6 games in a series and you still can't look over your other shoulder? That's so funny to me. That's crazy, right? 6 games. And admittedly, Judgment was a weird one. The campaign was really fun and everything else was really goofy and not as good as the other ones. I thought Judgment was done by the Coalition for some reason, because I blamed them for it not being as good as I wanted it to be, but it was done by Epic, if you can believe it. This is the first game the Coalition made, and they did a really good job. I'm just super hoping that 5 can assuage some of the issues that I've got with this game. Because the Horde mode, I like a lot. It's not as interesting as 3, because 3 had way more enemies, and I just think the enemies were more interesting. But it's still fun, and I think that the movement in this game has come a nice way. Like, I like the counters on the cover. I like being able to jump over cover while running. I like some of the additions to it. I think it's created a really nice arc to the movement suite in this game. But I think we're not at the end, because if we were, I think a Guardian spawns, right? Yeah, there he is. You see how he doesn't have a shield though? I could have totally got advantage on him then, but because I'm such a bitch and I don't want to redo this, I ran all the way back over here. I'm going to mark him, and then I'm going to pepper him with the Retro Lancer. And then all we have to do after this is the Wind Flare moment, which I need to talk about because they're really hard. You die so fast in these sections, they're really stupid. But I've discovered that it's not about speed. I used to think that by roadie running and jumping over cover and getting ahead of the curve, you would somehow alleviate the difficulty and make it easier, but that's not true. It's programmed to counter how aggressive you are, it seems like. So in my opinion, if you walk, they all fan out quite nicely and you have a much easier time of doing this. But I thought that once the initial impact happened that more would come, so you'd be getting them from behind and things, and that's not how it works. If you just kind of take your time and just, you know, slowly meander forward, it seems to show the pattern a lot better. So hopefully that'll help you on future moments, because there's a few of those and they're really dumb.